You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
So, welcome.
Vaccines. What's up with them?
What's up with that? Welcome to Chelsea and Grace's Vaccination Station.
We are administering vaccines out of the comfort of our own apartments. Not FDA approved, but come on by. A little extra boost.
A little love. Yes, just put a little bit more love in your bloodstream, if you know what I'm saying. Give us a call. We are accepting monetary donations.
I could never inject anything into anyone. Actually, no. If someone needed me to, I could. But it's hard for my brain to wrap around. I don't even want to get into it because I'm going to sound dumb. But it's like you just put something underneath your skin and it just like flows in your bloodstream.
That's how it works, baby.
That's not how it seemed to work in the Rugrats episode I watched where they go into Chucky's body.
It's not. Yeah, no. Or in all the Magic School Bus episodes where What's-Her-Face took them into people's bodies without their consent.
Miss Frizz?
Yeah. Miss Frizz, no way! Do 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 do.
Exactly. Well, welcome to our Magic School Bus. This is Two Girls, One Crossword, your favorite weekly Podword crosscast.
I'm Chelsea Rowan. If you hear my dog moaning, he's here with me today. Me and my dog.
And I'm Grace Topinka, and if you hear my cat meowing, it's because he thinks he wants to go out in the hallway, but he doesn't know what he wants. He thinks he wants to go out there, and then I let him out, and then he immediately gets scared and comes back in. So, that's pets for them, for you.
For y'all folks here joining us today.
Should we just jump into
Should we just move on?
Yes, let's move on from this, whatever we call this section.
What is this? The opener? The opener that we mess up every time? I mean, how many times can our listeners actually put up with a failed opening attempt? I
feel like calling an opener is being a little generous.
Yeah, no, I'm being extremely generous right now.
Well, I can go take us into a more structured section.
Please.
Because I really liked the poll we did on Polapalooza.
Ooh, it was a good one.
Yes. So we asked our Twitter followers, get in, we're going blank hunting. Choose your own adventure. And the options were Yeti, which was our topic from last week, one of them, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, who we've also covered, and the Chupacabra, whom we've also covered back in the day, if you've been with us since then.
Ooh.
So
Who's the winner?
It was neck and neck for first and second.
Okay.
So at 37%, Chupacabra won.
I am shocked. I'm actually shocked.
Why? Well, okay. I'll talk a little bit more why I think that is. 36% though, right behind Loch Ness Monster.
Okay.
Bigfoot 18%, and then the Yeti was 9%. Now, no shade to the Yeti because that was my topic last week, but Yeti hunting sounds really cold.
Yes, and deadly. Literally, like people die on the mountain.
Bigfoot is kind of boring if you live in North America because it's like I don't want to take a vacation in North America. But Loch Ness Monster, you get to go to Scotland, and then Chupacabra, you get to go to South America. So I feel like maybe that's why those two won out, and also interesting monsters.
I think so too, and I think I would vote for Nessie because it seems like the least dangerous, the most leisurely experience. To just kind of hop on a boat, see what's going on. We don't have any reports of Nessie killing people, right? We have reports of the Chupacabra killing people.
I feel like Chupacabra hunting would be hard too, because it's not like, just go to this one spot.
Right.
Loch Ness Monster, it's like you go to the lake, you see her or you don't.
Right.
Chupacabra,
I would bring like a bottle of whiskey, get on the boat, and start screaming, Nessie! And she would come, clearly, because that's how it works.
Yeah. Well, that's Polapalooza for you. Thank you. Jump into our next section?
Let's get into the hits and the shits from the past week. Why don't I open up my notes here?
Well, I'll start us off with a shit that you may have chosen too. Because we've talked about this before. But it's from the New York Times, Wednesday, April 22nd by Brandon Copy. 42 across, fashion icon with a numbered fragrance.
The answer was Coco Chanel, the Nazi.
Yes. We're done with Coco Chanel in the crossword.
She's out. Sorry. Not sorry. Just like, let's move on, you know? We just don't put Nazis in crosswords in the 21st century. So, at least not my crosswords. You know, the millions of crosswords I've constructed across my lifetime.
If I made a crossword, would not put it in.
She's done. Officially done. Yeah, what else? What else do I got going on here? Speaking of, monsters, I just want to do a couple shout outs. Nessie did make an appearance in the crosswords this week. Amy Lucido had a puzzle in the New Yorker on April 23rd. It was a Wednesday. 5 down. And we also talked about this specific word, cryptozoological nickname. And the answer was Nessie. So yes. Nessie is short for the Loch Ness monster, right? And Grace and I had talked last week about what you call people who search for these like creatures and beasts. And we were like butchering, obviously, the title. But it's cryptozoology. Mm-hmm. Cryptozoologists.
And I did that puzzle. Normally do the New Yorkers together, but I didn't this week. But I did do it separately, and I knew that when I saw that, I was like, I actually know what that is.
Ooh. And if you're interested in learning about Nessie, check out episode 56. It's called Blue-Eyed Monster. We talk about the Loch Ness Monster and none other than Barbie herself. So head over. It's a good one. Another monster representation in the puzzles this week was from the April 22nd New York Times Adam Wagner puzzle. Okay. And this is something Grace and I have been talking about it feels like for years at this point. Okay. 67 across, Fiona or Shrek?
Ogre.
And the answer was ogre. And this is one of the first times that I have noticed that ogre has not been clued as some kind of like evil monster. Mm-hmm. We're bringing the clues into the 21st century, folks. We're re-imaging what ogres are. And I'm loving it. I'm here for it. So thank you, Adam, for that ogre representation.
The ogre PR team did not come out with 4 Shrek movies for us to still be cluing ogres as monsters, okay? They've reclaimed their image.
They're back. They're better than ever. Do not sleep on ogres. Okay. So yeah, that's what I got.
Well, speaking of Amy Lucido's puzzle, The New Yorker, Wednesday, April 21st, there was a lot of clues in there that I liked. I'm just going to go through them.
They're amazing. We always love her puzzles.
Yes. 23 down, focus on the trees rather than the forest. Myopia, because that's like being nearsighted, I believe. Mm-hmm. 14 across, like many Netflix shows, bingeable.
Yes.
23 across, imagination, mind's eye. Wish it was Mind Palace, but that's fine. But yeah, just some fun clues that I feel like I don't see very often in other crosswords. The fill and the cluing. So yes. Shout out to Amy. We love you.
Always. We love you, Amy. I loved the like Netflix shows or whatever that clue was and bingeable. It's so relatable. Like, I think not only in quarantine, but in general, right? Shows used to not be bingeable. And I don't mean like just because we physically couldn't binge them because they weren't, you know, you didn't have the box set of the OC or whatever it was. But I just feel like our culture has changed to the point where you absolutely expect to have all episodes readily available before you sit down and actually watch a show. I've started noticing that Netflix does these new episodes every week. They do these kind of releases. And I'm like, I'm not starting that. I like absolutely refuse to start that until all episodes are available because what, you expect me to wait for content? Absolutely not. I will sit down and watch 16 hours worth of this TV show though. So let's speed this process up.
Not me. Sometimes I watch shows the old-fashioned way. I mean, I watch The Masked Singer, but I'm not going to talk about The Masked Singer. I'm not going to get into that.
She wants to talk about it so bad, Grace. You can talk about it. Nobody's going to judge you.
It's fine. I'd rather talk about the Friday New York Times puzzle, April 23rd by Robin Weintraub.
Oh, I didn't get to do this one yet. But please, tell me. Spoil it for me.
Well, there were just some fun fill and clues, I thought. 5 down, event that goes all night, sleepover party.
Oh, God.
61 across, person who's really sweet and soft, a teddy bear.
Oh, it should have been like the Pillsbury Dough person.
Teddy bear could have been clued by so many things, so I like that she did it with a person. But this was probably my favorite, the opener, 1 across, give some badly needed help, ? Abets.
Ooh.
Because it's help, but it is bad help.
Very good. I love a good opener. Speaking of good openers, I think there's a couple really lovely openers this week. And there goes my dog just moaning. Please just bear with me here. My favorite opener was from Friday, April 16th, New York Times by Tom Pepper, which is an incredible last name and also a great dog name. Like if you had like a chocolate lab, you could name them Pepper. Hello, Salt and Pepper, get a white dog, black dog.
Okay,
anyway.
But a chocolate lab? You mean a black lab?
Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you.
It's okay. Well, you have a black lab in your family named Hershey, so we'll talk about that later.
Anyway, so Mr. Tom Pepper with the incredible last name, the opener for his puzzle was One Across, game on an erasable court. And the answer was hopscotch. Mm-hmm. That was a good one. I liked
took me a little bit to get.
I actually got it right away, and I felt really, really smart. Anyway,
Wow,
not to like flex, but, you know. Another great opener from the New York Times this week was from the Saturday, the 17th, by Leslie Rogers. One Across, colorful Pillsbury cake with a portmanteau name.
Funfetti.
Funfetti. Isn't that awesome?
Oh, I didn't realize. I'm going to use funfetti as my example when I explain what a portmanteau is, because I always use smog.
Right. Or like Merce, which I hate using Merce as an example.
But funfetti, is that a portmanteau? Because it doesn't abbreviate fun. It's like fun and confetti, I guess, funfetti. Or funny confetti.
Right. Is the cake funny? My last favorite opener from the week is not from New York Times. It's from the WAPO. You know, Evan Bernhal, Sunday, April 18th. One Across. Expert on labor pains, ? And the answer was Marx. You'd love to see it. So good.
I also liked from that puzzle 20 Across, channel that might be blocked by a ship. There's a canal. Just felt like it was nice and topical.
It really did. I was like, I really wish I could have just filled in Suez just because that would have been even more fun. I really liked the theme from the WAPO this weekend. I always love the themes, but this one was a lot of fun. Essentially, the clues were, or rather, how would you describe this?
I don't remember what the theme was.
Essentially, it would be clued as something like Bovine College, ? But it was, the answer had a company that was actually removed from it. So let me just give you some of my favorites. 47 Across was Bovine College, ? And the answer was Ox University. But later on in the puzzle, there was a connected answer, and it said something like, company removed from 47 Across. And the answer was Ford. So Ox University was actually Oxford University. So you had these two clues kind of working in tandem with each other, which was nice. Another example, 88 Across, rodents that express favorable opinions. And the answer was approval rats. Nice. But then there was a later clue related to it, company removed from 88 Across, and it was ing. So the full phrase would be approval ratings.
Yes, now I'm remembering, and I did enjoy that too, once I figured out what it was.
Right. My favorite from that was 117 Across, last spring, ? And the answer was closing hop. And the company removed was UPS, so it was closing up shop.
Very good.
So,
I love closing hop as your last spring.
I love that too. Very good. What else you got for me?
That's all.
That's it and that's all? All right. Okay. I got a couple more that I'm gonna, put on your radar.
Okay.
The Friday, April 16th, New Yorker by Anna Schechtman. 38 Across, title for Doug Emhoff as of 2021. And the answer was First Gentleman. Mm-hmm. Right smack dab in the center of the puzzle, all the way across. Just beautiful to see it. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I wanted to ask you a question about this one. 65 Across, in quotes, you get the idea. And the answer was ... And to me, ... doesn't really suggest like you get the idea. ... to me is like kind of ominous. But I've also found that by working in like, we don't necessarily work in like a corporate setting, but it's not, not a corporate setting. But I found that the older people that I work with use ... all the time, in ellipses to mean like, what I'm saying.
Etc.
And I'm like, to me, if you say, okay, ... I'm like, are we on ice. Are we not talking right now?
Well, I feel like these are two different things. I think in the clue they mean if you're like, the animals at the zoo, elephants, monkeys, giraffes, donkeys, ... Like,
Okay. Okay.
It's kind of using more in place of etc., which I think some people do. I would probably use etc., but that's me, and don't listen to me because I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I'm also an idiot, so you can also ignore me. But that's just like a personal thing. Anytime I see ... after a word, I immediately think that you're trailing off because you've got something else in your mind and you're like feeling like there's tension between us, I
do feel like ... in emails can be ominous. But
They're
also,
ominous.
Like, I feel like parents use it a lot in texts as well. Or my dad will be like, okay, period. I'm like, you're mad? But that's just, he does everything. All his texts are like that.
Right. What else did I like? Oh, did you do the Thursday, April 22nd New York Times by Jem Birch?
Yes.
Okay. The theme itself, like the topic, was James Bond. And like there was rebuses with double O in it, so for 007, and the rebuses of the double O's spelled out, or not spelled out, but like
were in the shape of a 7.
Right. And the theme content itself is like not something that I was like dying for. I don't really care about James Bond, but I did like that when you solved it on the website. I'm not sure how it looked on the app, but after you finished the puzzle, it did like a nice little 7 animation, which was fun.
Yeah, it did on the app too. And then it kept doing it when I was like trying to look through to see which ones did I like? I'm like, just stop moving so I can see which clues I liked.
Right. Another thing I just wanted to point out, in case people didn't know, but there has not been ever a black or person of color James Bond or a woman James Bond. But there is a new James Bond film coming out this year called, what's it called? No Time to Die. And Daniel Craig is playing James Bond as 007, but I think, spoiler alert, I don't know if you care about this stuff, but he retires or something. And there is a new recruit in the MI6 who is going to, since 007 as a title is retiring, she can then take over that 007 title, but she will not be called James Bond or Jamie Bond or Jenna Bond or any of that. I think her character name is like Nomi or Numi, and she's played by Lashana Lynch, which is, it's kind of exciting to see a woman 007 and a black 007, but I also think it's kind of like cheap to, say, we can't have you actually be James Bond. It's kind of like, they won't give the role to Idris Elba because James Bond can't be black. And it just really pisses me off to see that this is like, they're trying to be inclusive by also, skirting around the actual issue. You know what I mean?
I wonder who made that final choice not to have her name James Bond. I think it'd be awesome to have a woman named James Bond. I just like name James for a woman, but
I'm totally with you. But yeah,
I might actually see that then.
Yeah, she looks really freaking cool in the trailer. Check it out if that's something you're interested in. But
this
I just wanted to...
episode brought to you by...
No Time to Die. Sponsored by Samsung. Oh, anyway, we are accepting monetary donations, like I said. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so that's what I got for Hits and Shits this week.
Are those... Okay. Well, before we get into the coin flip, we want to let everyone know to stay tuned until the very end of the episode because we have an exciting interview with Haley Gold. She is the author of Letters to Margaret, which is a crossword-themed graphic novel with interactive crosswords that you can do while reading along. It's very exciting, so stay tuned for that. It's at the end of the show. But until then, we will flip the coin.
Ooh, definitely stay tuned. But it is time to flip the coin. All right, listeners. What's it called? The coin flip. We're going to do it. The coin is flipping, my friends. It's going to start flipping right now. It's heads.
That's you. See, we're back
I haven't
on
gone
track.
first in a long, long time. I am happy to be here. Sit down, please. Stop clapping. Anyway,
All right, I'll just relax for the first bit now.
My topic this week comes from the Tuesday, April 20th USA Today puzzle by Brooke Husick and Matthew Stock. Again, another great opener. One across. A leap one is 366.
Year?
The answer is year. So we're going to be talking about leap years and leap day days, which I think is kind of thematic because I talked about daylight saving time.
Mm-hmm.
These are not related. I mean, they're related in that they talk about time and like the construct of time and how people try to, stay in sync and how they manipulate time and how they try to kind of just exist within time, right? So we're talking about leap years today.
I almost had a mini panic attack. So I was like, wait, I did leap year, but I didn't. I just mentioned it in my Sadie Hawkins dance episode. Briefly.
That's right. Right. We're going to get a little deeper today. Okay. So leap years are also known as intercalary years or, and I love this one, bisextile years. Ew. So yes, leap years are on the LGBTQ spectrum. I'm claiming it here. If you're born on a leap year, you're automatically queer.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Anyway, so that's some additional names you could call them if you're interested. Leap years are calendar years that contain an additional day, and they contain this additional day in order to keep what we call our calendar year, like the year that we as humans follow, in sync with the astronomical year, okay? So you might think that it takes an even 365 for the Earth to, circle the sun. That is not true, okay? You have been lied to. It actually takes 365.2421 days for the Earth to make the full orbit around the sun, which means, after a time, our calendar year will be a little out of sync with the astronomical year. So by inserting an additional day into the year, we can kind of correct that out of syncness, that drifting away from the calendar, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, imagine if we didn't have a leap year. We'd be weeks behind.
Months, years, who knows? Actually, I do know. So
before I don't know when leap year started, so I'm not sure how far back we have to go.
She doesn't know, and she's about to find out. Okay, but just to clarify, before I hop into the details, I'll be talking mostly within the construct of the Gregorian Calendar, which is what we follow in the United States, and most countries in the world follow the Gregorian Calendar to some extent. But that's not to say that every country or religion or, group of people follows the Gregorian Calendar. Some countries that follow the Gregorian Calendar also follow other calendars to some extent, so traditional calendars or religious calendars. Mm-hmm. If I'm talking about a different calendar, I will let you all know. You better believe it.
Okay.
So fine. What is the Gregorian calendar? It was introduced in October 1582 by some guy named Pope Gregory VIII. Okay, whoever this guy is.
Some dude.
And the Gregorian calendar was introduced to modify the calendar that came before, which is known as the Julian calendar. A lot of people know about these differences, right? But we're going to talk about them. One of the main reasons we switched from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar was because the Julian calendar incorrectly calculated that the average solar year or astronomical year is exactly 365.25 days, which is an overestimate. Because if you remember what I just said, an actual trip around the sun is 365.2421. It seems like a very small difference, and it is. But in the grand scheme of time, baby, it is not small at all.
That will catch up to you.
It's going to catch up. Mm-hmm. So the Gregorian reform, when we switched to the Gregorian calendar, shortened the average calendar year by 0.0075 days to stop the continued drift that the Julian calendar was kind of making happen, right? Mm-hmm. Within the Julian calendar, we actually did have leap years. It was a cycle of 3 normal years and 1 leap year. Their math was a little off, like I said, which means that if you were to follow the Julian calendar, every 128 days you would gain an extra day of time, which is you're okay, what the hell does that mean? From the year, if you were to use the Julian calendar from the year 1901 to 2099, the Julian calendar would be 13 days behind a corresponding Gregorian calendar. So there's a 13-day difference within 100 years.
Yeah.
Okay. It might not seem that 0.0075 of a miscalculation is that bad, but like I said, a 13-day difference between the two calendar systems. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that would create lots of issues. And one of the big issues specifically that made Pope Gregory want to like switch things up and like fix it is that the Easter holiday kept falling later and later and later and later in the year. And he was like, this isn't lining up with what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to line up with this sunset at this equinox and blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't working anymore. And so he's like, we have to fix it. Okay. The Gregorian calendar follows a leap year cycle of 4 normal years, which have 365 days, and 1 leap year that has 366 days. And this calendar system keeps the solar year nearly equal with our calendar year. It is not by any means perfect, but it is very, very close, much closer than the Julian calendar. So what does that mean? At the rate, like if we continue to follow the Gregorian calendar, which is the plan, it will take 3,300 years for the Gregorian calendar to move a single day out of sync with the solar year.
And then people 3,000 years from now can deal with that.
Yes, exactly. Actually, there's articles online like, what happens when we get to that point? And it's like, well, we'll figure it out.
It's like, first of all, the planet won't be here then. So it's actually not even an issue.
Right. Let's stop thinking about it and just like enjoy our TikToks, right? Yeah, I feel like if we made it 3,300 more years, who knows? I just feel like they'll just like delete one of the days and just start over with the Gregorian calendar again. Like, why not? Like, every 4,000 years, just delete a day and start over. This is me with literally zero mathematical training, astronomical training, anything.
You're a scientist, as far as I'm concerned. That sounds like a great idea to me. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sometimes the easiest solution is the answer.
There we go. So back to the Gregorian calendar and the Gregorian leap year. Historically, the Gregorian leap year would actually fall on February 24th. Well, it wouldn't fall on February 24th. What they would do is they would just duplicate February 24th. They'd be like, okay, we're going to do it again, like Groundhog's Day, right? You know, just you wake up and it's the 24th again. But it is now accepted to keep the days in February entirely sequential by adding leap day to the end of the month, so February 29th. There are actually rules for when leap years occur. I did not know this. This was shocking to me, okay? So here are the rules. A leap year must be divisible by 4. So that's the first rule. So think 2016, 2020, and 2024. Okay? Except if it's divisible by 100. So 1900, 2100, and 2200. These years would be skipped. We would skip that as a leap year. It just wouldn't happen.
Oh.
Okay.
I mean, I guess the scientists worked that all out.
They worked it all out. They know what they're talking about. But then there's even an exception to that rule. Okay. So it can't be divisible by 100, except if it is also divisible by 400. So the year 2000 and the year 2400.
Okay.
So,
I see what they're getting at.
If you're interested in whether or not we're skipping a leap year, you can either do the math yourself, or you can Google it.
Is there a website that's like, are we skipping a leap year this year? You know how they have one that's like, is Mercury in retrograde? It just says yes or no.
Actually, I don't think there is a website, so we should make that website. And then we could just leave it up after we're dead. That'd be great.
If I knew how to do that, I would.
Just get like a Wix site or something.
Okay, but I'm not paying for it.
No, we'll get the free version. It'll be like, do we skip leap year this year? .wix.com.
Okay.
Cool. We can take
we'll workshop this.
Patreon donations and that feeds the subscription. Anyway, we're workshopping it. We'll figure it out. So yeah, that's like what, you need the rules to follow in order for it to be a leap year. Let's talk a little bit about other historical leap year situations or people trying to manipulate time throughout history. So civilizations throughout history have tried many different calendar systems to keep themselves in sync with the astronomical year. Most of them have failed. Okay, that's why we are all now on the Gregorian calendar. It starts with, early Egyptians and others from China and even Rome. They used lunar calendars to track time. But here's the deal. Lunar months averaged 29.5 days, and so the year would actually only be 354 days long. So societies that kept lunar time quickly drifted well out of sync with the seasons, and they would actually have an 11-day lag. So they'd be like 11 days behind where they should have been. Mm-hmm. And the Egyptians, they actually knew something was wrong. They were like, something's not lining up here. So to compensate for like the differentiation, they just threw on a shit ton of festivals and parties at the end of their year to kind of make up for the lag for following the lunar schedule. I mean, let's have a shortened year and just have like 3 weeks worth of partying.
I really feel like we should get leap day off every year. It's like an extra day, and you get to do whatever you want to do with that extra day. It's yours.
Ooh, we could probably champion for that at our job. If we got my boss behind it, we might have some luck. Every 4 years, 1 extra day off. I'd love it. Workshop that too. Mm-hmm. Another ancient civilization, the Sumerians, they simply divided their years into 12 months, and each month had 30 days. So they had 360-day years, which was nearly a week shorter than what actually happens to get you around the sun. Mm-hmm. By the time Julius Caesar was emperor of Rome, the Roman lunar calendar had diverged with the seasons by approximately 3 months. That's crazy. They're 3 months off. To correct this, Caesar adopted a single 445-day-long year known as the Year of Confusion, and this happened in 46 BCE. Sounds extremely confusing. But after that very long year, he mandated years be 365.25 days long, with a leap day added every 4th year. So this is the first ever systematic leap year situation in European culture, which is kind of cool. Why do you think the calendar system we followed before the Gregorian calendar was called the Julian calendar?
Well, because Julius Caesar
made it up. So yeah, of the ancient world, we can thank Caesar for laying the blueprint for what we now know as the Gregorian calendar. So yeah, and then you fast forward from Caesar to the 16th century and you have Pope Gregory all upset that Caesar and his astronomers got the math wrong. Because Caesar was like 365.25 and Greg's astronomers were like, it's actually 365.2421. So
I'm just imagining like the Pope today caring about astronomy so much. I feel like that job description has really changed over time.
Really has. I don't know about this Pope, but most of the popes in the recent years were more worried about like their Gucci slippers and stuff,
I don't think they're wearing Gucci slippers.
I think, or Versace, something like that. Yeah. Is that a lie? Am I making that? I think it's true.
It could be true. I don't know. They're more worried about telling people that, if they don't act on their gay impulses, then they're not sinners. But if they do act on them, but then we still love them. I don't know. The new guy's saying
we still love them, but they're still going to hell. Because you're supposed to love sinners, even though they're going to hell. So that's fun.
I don't know what the current
I actually think that's what it is.
Okay. Well, I don't want to say anything wrong because I don't know.
You can come for me. Don't come for Grace.
Yeah.
Getting away from the popes and whether or not they hate gay people. If you're wondering why February is the month that we actually get that extra day, it's because when Julius and his astronomers were trying to figure out the calendar, February was the last month of their year. So they just tacked it on to that month. And that's it. I also read an interesting fact, and I did not verify this, but I'm going to tell it to y'all anyway. If you're interested, Google it yourself. But the Roman emperor after Caesar was Augustus, okay? And February had 30 days like the rest of the months in the Roman year. But Augustus was like, I hate Caesar. Meh, meh, meh. And so what he did is he took days off of Caesar's month, February, so that he could have more days in his month than Caesar. He did it as he was kind of salty. I mean, Caesar was killed by, the senators, which we talk about in a different episode. So,
yeah.
So yeah, now I'm going to talk to you about some leap day traditions, get into some fun. I think the most famous Western leap year tradition everybody knows about it's known as Bachelor's Day. And it happens on Leap Day, February 29th, every 4 years. The story goes that St. Bridget in the 5th century was upset that women were not allowed to propose to men. So she complained to St. Patrick, as you do. And so St. Patrick designated that the only day that women are allowed to propose to men is on the day that doesn't happen annually, which is Leap Day. So thank you, St. Patrick, for being a misogynist. It's all good. That's probably not true because at the time, St. Bridget was like 5 years old or something like that. So they don't think that that's true. It's just some sort of folklore thing passed through the ages, right? I think we talked about this too at some point, maybe in Valentine's Day.
No, it was from my Sadie Hawkins because that's the dance where the girl asks the guy. So I think I talked about it with that.
Right. I couldn't remember if it was that or if it was St. Valentine or whatever, but okay, Sadie Hawkins. In Denmark, if you turn down a Leap Day proposal, you must give the woman 12 pairs of gloves, supposedly so that the spurned maiden can wear them to hide the horror of not having a ring.
That's a lot of gloves.
Lots
I guess
of gloves.
One for every month.
Yes, probably. And one of my favorite trash movies to watch is actually Leap Year, starring Amy Adams and Matthew Good. I truly love this movie. I've rented it I don't know how many times. Oh my God. Grace, if you're ever down to watch a crappy romance movie, we should watch that one. It's so
I've
bad
seen it
and
on my
so
docket,
good.
but I've never watched it.
Oh, it's so good. I would rewatch it with you immediately. Okay, moving on. If you were born on Leap Day, you are known as a leapling or a leaper. Love that. About 5 million people in the entire world were born on February 29th. And the odds of this happening is 1 in every 1,461 people. So?
I would love to be born on Leap Day. I would talk about it constantly. My friend's grandma was born on Leap Day. She's like, my grandma's only 14 or whatever. You know?
Right. I would also love to be born on Leap Day, but that would also mean that you're a Pisces. So I'm sorry, I don't want to be a Pisces. But that's just my Aquarius talking.
Pisces is my Oppo.
I know. I really hope that you find a good Pisces in your life. I have animosity towards Pisces just because, we're right next to each other in the zodiac. Anyway, it's like a Aquarius Pisces thing. You wouldn't get it.
I get it. It's like a Virgo Leo thing.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, there's also all these superstitions that leap year can bring you bad luck. So let's talk about some of these. In Greece, apparently it's bad luck to marry during a leap year, especially on Leap Day, as your marriage will end in divorce. Okay. Think about that. In Scotland, it's said that if you are born on Leap Day, you will have a life of untold suffering.
Oh.
Woof. Also in Scotland, leap year is apparently bad for, bad years for livestock. There's a saying that goes, leap year was never a good sheep year, which I have literally no reason to use that, but I will try to find a way to use that every day because I love that.
Get that on a shirt.
Actually, yes. And then in Taiwan, it's thought that parents are more likely to die during a leap year. So in order to prevent this, children will go home during the leap month and make a dish called pig trotter noodles, which is supposed to bring parents good health and fortune.
I bet you parents made that up just to get their kids to come visit them. They were like, it's a leap year, you know what that means.
Come on home. One last fun thing. There is a French newspaper, first published in 1980, and it only publishes once every 4 years on Leap Day. It's called La Bougie du Sapeur, and it is the least frequently published newspaper in the world. And according to NPR, the paper sells around 150,000 copies every time it's published, surpassing most of the daily newspapers in France. So that is
they're smart.
Why don't we work for them? I feel like that would be exactly what we should be doing.
We should make our own in the U.S. What would we write about, though?
Literally
it only
anything.
Comes out. What if it's just a legitimate, just regular newspaper where it just talks about, the local news for that one day?
Imagine how cool it would be to collect those.
We got a bunch of stuff we got to talk about. Let's make a Google meeting. We got
some things to do.
A couple different items on our agenda.
I'm going to close this off with 2 different types of calendar systems, or rather just 2 other cultures that use different calendar systems than us. And then I'll pass the baton to Grace. So there is the, in Islam, they use the Islamic calendar. And it's a lunar system that adds up to only 354 days and shifts some 11 days from the Gregorian calendar each year. So each year it's 11 days apart. And then sometimes they do add like a leap day or a leap month, depending on how they're feeling.
Yeah. How are we going to catch up? I mean, how are we going to be in sync again?
They might never be in sync. If you actually go onto the Wikipedia, they show you other cultures that don't follow the Gregorian calendar, and it shows you what year they're in and like all that stuff. It's interesting to look at.
It's so hard to wrap my brain around. I'm glad other people are figuring this out. I'll just say that.
Right. I also read somewhere that it's like people will adjust to whatever calendar system that they're on. You know, like if you move to somewhere and they had a different calendar system, you would just figure it out because everything would be in that calendar system, you know?
Yeah.
People's brains are interesting that way. Lastly, China, they use the Gregorian calendar for official purposes, right? But they also follow the traditional lunar calendar, and it follows the phases of the moons and implements an entire leap month about once every 3 years, which I think is kind of interesting. Yeah. And that's what I got for you on leap years.
Thanks. That was very interesting.
Yes, maybe we can. Maybe we'll watch Leap Year. Maybe we'll go to Ireland on Leap Day and just propose to someone in the street. And if they, or no, we should do it in Denmark. And then when they say no, which they obviously will because they don't know us, we will force them to buy us 12 pairs of gloves because then we can get free gloves. Are you in?
I'm in.
Amazing. See you in Denmark in 2024.
I see no downsides to that.
Just free gloves. That's all I see.
I mean, yes, a plane ticket, Airbnb.
The gloves, Grace, do it for the gloves.
Okay. My topic comes from the New York Times, Wednesday, April 21st puzzle by Brandon Copy, or Copy, I'm sorry. And it is 64 Cross Neo-Pagan Religion.
Wicca.
Yes.
Oh, wait. Yes. Let's talk about Wicca. Grace, let's talk about Wicca. I'm excited.
I just want to preface this by saying I'm not an expert. Anytime I do a religion topic, not an expert on religion. I should not be like your first source of information. This is just, I'm just scratching the surface.
Can I not cite you in my thesis?
No. And I'm also not going to go into Wiccan, like rituals and ceremonies and stuff because it's different for like, you know, different.
Like literally every sect is different.
Yeah. So I'm mostly going to talk about like the history and stuff. And it's very interesting because it's a really recent religion as far as, you know, most religions have been around forever and this one is pretty new. So first, Wicca, witchcraft, and paganism. What is the difference between those three? So this is from learnreligions.com. But Wicca is a tradition of witchcraft that was brought to the public by Gerald Gardner in the 1950s. Okay, so witchcraft has been around forever, but Wicca specifically only showed up in the 1950s. And not everyone who practices witchcraft is Wiccan. So there are people who consider themselves witches, who practice witchcraft, who are not Wiccan. There's also like a Christian witch movement. There is a Jewish mysticism movement, and there are atheist witches who don't follow any deities at all. And then paganism is an umbrella term that applies to a bunch of different earth-based faiths, including Wicca. So every Wiccan is a pagan, but not every pagan is a Wiccan. And the term pagan was originally used to describe people who lived in rural areas. And when like Christianity was spreading around everywhere through, you know, imperialism and stuff like that, those people who like lived out in the country, they were the last people to like let go of their old religions. So pagan came to mean like people who didn't worship the God of Abraham. So there we go.
Great.
So then this information is from history.com and Britannica.com. They both have Wicca sections. So that's where I got most of my information from. Okay. So Wicca is, as the clue said, like neo-paganism. It's a modern-day, nature-based pagan religion. Some consider it to be a modern interpretation of pagan practices. Ritual and practices differ among different Wiccans, but most do observe festivals that are like celebrating solstices and equinoxes. Most of them honor a male god and a female goddess. And they also incorporate herbalism and other natural objects into rituals. So it's very like has to do with nature and natural objects and like the lunar calendar and the different seasons and stuff like that. Okay.
Ooh. So there's the connection. There's the connection between our two topics, okay?
Yes.
Calendars. The sun and the moon.
The title, calendars. And most Wiccans do accept the Wiccan ethical code that states if it harm none, do what you will. So there's not really like rules as, you know, other religions have a lot of rules. Wiccan religions is just like, don't hurt people.
One of my understandings of Wiccan is that like, it's like each sect has their own set of not rules, but like practices. But you can be you can practice Wicca without even being within a group of people. Like you could be like a practicing witch like on your own, which I think is kind of interesting. Yeah, so there's no way to like define it because it's very loose, and I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see like huge churches of Wicca, right? Because there's no hierarchy system really. There's no like need to. There
is some hierarchy. We'll get into it.
Okay.
Because yes, you can be a witch and not be Wiccan, but you can also be Wiccan without belonging to like a coven, I believe. But okay, contrary to popular beliefs, they have no ties with Satan or devil worship. They don't even believe like that's a Christian thing. They don't believe in the devil. That's not what it's about. Even like I'm not going to get into Satanism, but that they don't really believe in the devil either. They're just like anti-religion. Anyways, that's a different topic. But okay. So the rituals of modern Wiccan practice can be traced back to a first-wave feminist, Egyptologist, and anthropologist and folklorist Margaret Murray. So in 1921, she wrote the book The Witch Cult in Western Europe, and it was just a book about cults in medieval Europe, and this inspired British people to like create their own covens and structure worship around her descriptions of these witch cults in medieval Europe. And Wicca did originate in Britain, by the way.
BT dubs.
Yes. So a lot of Murray's claims about medieval witch cults have since been disproven, but she still did have a big influence on Wiccan rituals today. But the founder of Wicca is Gerald Gardner. He's widely considered the founder of Wicca. So Gardner spent a lot of time in Asia, where he became familiar with occult beliefs and magical practices. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, there are a lot of religions way before Wicca that have more bases in like mysticism and nature and stuff.
Right. And there's this, I've read a lot about Wicca. One of the books that I've read is Drawing Down the Moon by Margaret Adler, who talks about paganism, neo-paganism, and witchcraft in the 20th and 21st century, and kind of like this expansion and this explosion of this belief system. And yes, Margaret Murray, she wrote these books about witchcraft and the history of witchcraft and paganism and Wicca within England and Europe specifically. And she basically lied about all of these like cults that these like witch cults that used to exist around Europe. And then this Gerald guy, he comes back from his Asia travels and he's like, hey, I'm like really into this and I'm gonna like bring my own spice and like let's add spice to this, you know? And it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah. Whatever I mean, whatever. As far as religions go, I feel like they're not very problematic, but
no, I agree. Yeah.
Something to think about. Okay, so anyways, he returned to England before World War II. He became involved in a coven in Highcliffe, England in 1934. And in 1946, he bought his own plot of land that was to be used as headquarters for a coven of his own. But at this time, witchcraft was still illegal in England. So there were anti-witchcraft laws in England since 1541. They had initially been passed by King Henry VIII. And basically, if you were found to be practicing witchcraft, it was punishable by death. And then in 1562, Henry's daughter, Queen Elizabeth I, passed a new law that said it's only punishable by death if you harm someone. If you don't harm anyone, then you only face imprisonment. So that's a trade-off. But it's so crazy to me that they weren't repealed until 1951. So finally, these like archaic witchcraft laws were repealed in 1951. This allowed Gardner to publish his book Witchcraft Today in 1954, and that's when the term Wicca was first coined. But fun fact, he called it Wicca with one C, and the second C wasn't added until the 1960s. So,
ooh,
spiced it up a little bit. According to Gardner, the word was derived from Scots English and meant wise people. But Gardner gained a lot of followers from this, and Wicca started spreading to the States in the 60s. This is like an aside. Gardner died of a heart attack in 1964, and in 1973, his extensive personal collection of artifacts was sold to Ripley's, believe it or not.
Ooh.
So if you want to find him, ask Ripley.
Okay.
But Gardner didn't do this alone. Another big player is Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley.
Yes.
Oh.
Gardner had met him
Sorry,
in the
ahead.
1940s, and Crowley had been doing rituals for a while. In 1914, he proposed the idea of forming a new religion that would pull from old pagan traditions, worshipping the earth, celebrating equinoxes, solstices, and other hallmarks of nature-based worship. And a lot of the Wiccan rituals that Gardner was the one to actually write down came from Crowley.
Did you know, as a weird aside, Aleister Crowley has a very strange connection with, what's his name from Scientology?
L. Ron Hubbard?
Yes. L. Ron Hubbard was really into magic and sci-fi, and he was obsessed with Aleister Crowley, and he was like a pen pal with Aleister Crowley for a long time. And a lot of the basis of Scientology comes from paganism and witchcraft and Satanism, which Aleister Crowley knew a lot about. And so L. Ron Hubbard got a lot of his inspiration for Scientology from none other than Aleister Crowley himself, who also helped found Wicca. So just a fun little aside for you all.
These two dudes just creating religions.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gardner wrote the Book of Shadows, which is a collection of spells and rituals and is central to Wiccan practice. It's said that some initiates had to make their own copy by hand, and the origin of the title, Book of Shadows, is unknown, but some believe it's borrowed from the Scottish children's author Helen Douglas Adams.
Okay.
She had a couple different books about shadows and stuff. In 1963, Gardner initiated British expat and Long Island resident Raymond Buckland, and Buckland went to the U.S. and he established the first coven there.
Let's do it.
Another U.S. person is Alex Sanders. He found a strain of Wicca known as Alexandrian Wicca in the 60s. He was kind of a ham. He was big into publicity. He wrote a book. He made a film called Legend of Witches in 1970. And he talked about himself a lot. He pushed myths about his own lineage, claiming royal ancestry and saying that his grandmother was not only a Wiccan, but she had learned a strain of witchcraft that supposedly originated in Atlantis and involved King Arthur and Merlin.
None other.
Mm-hmm. So he garnered a lot of young followers, obviously really told really good stories. And so people said they think he played a big part in popularizing Wicca in the 1970s. But have you noticed something so far?
Men.
Yes.
Men.
So there seems to be a lot of men involved in the beginning of Wicca. And I feel like today Wicca is heavily associated with women and feminism. And not to say that there weren't big players who were women in the beginning of Wicca, because there were. But it wasn't until the 70s that the American version of Wicca went from being a magic-based pagan religion claiming British heritage to being a nature-based spiritual movement with heavy tones of environmentalism and feminism. That's 1970s. That's not that long ago.
No, but that was also it was coinciding with this new age phenomenon in the US at the time. And this interest in environmentalism post
Hippie
world,
stuff.
it's exactly, post Vietnam and stuff.
So I want to talk about Laurie Cabot, who is the Witch of Salem. She was a teacher at Salem State College, and she opened one of the first occult stores in the U.S., and Governor Michael Dukakis declared her the official Witch of Salem in 1977.
Yes.
In 1986, she founded the Witches League of Public Awareness. But one of the most interesting stories about her is that she helped solve a murder in 1991.
Okay.
So, this is the story. I guess trigger warning, I'm going to be talking about murder, and it is somewhat violent. I'm not going to go too far into it, but two neighbors went missing, Martha and Tom. Tom like showed back up again, and he said that they were on a sailboat together, and Martha fell off the sailboat and hit her head and, was lost. So the police tried to find her body, like according to where Tom said it was, but they couldn't. So they asked Laurie Cabot for help. So Cabot had a vision that Tom had actually murdered Martha and threw her off with an anchor tied to her feet and weights around her waist. And the police investigated the area that Cabot told them Martha's body was, and they found her just as Cabot described, with like the weights and stuff. So then Tom went on the run, but Cabot had a vision that he was in a cabin, and she cast a binding spell to make sure he would make a mistake and get caught and wouldn't be able to escape. So later, some people in a small town near the Canadian border reported a car that they didn't recognize parked outside their neighbor's cabin, even though their neighbors were supposedly out of town, and also the lights in the cabin were on. So the neighbors were like, those people aren't supposed to be there, what's going on? The police get there. They found Tom. He had like shaved all his hair, and he was getting ready to basically escape to Canada. So.
Oh my God. Okay.
So the feminist influence in Wicca strengthened in the 70s and 80s when women started entering the religion, attracted by the fact that people were worshiping a female deity, a goddess. However, they noticed like the religious ranks were steeped in misogyny. So in 1971, Wiccan activist Z Budapest started the Susan B. Anthony Coven, which
she's amazing.
Yes, which practiced Dianic Wicca, which is a form of matriarchal lunar worship. Budapest wrote the feminist Book of Shadows, and a number of feminist covens branched off from this one, basically.
Z Budapest. If you're interested in paganism, neo-paganism, and Wicca, witchcraft in the United States, read about Z Budapest. She's amazing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, please continue.
So in 1986, Wicca was recognized as an official religion in the United States through the court Detmer versus Landon. So in this case, Herbert Daniel Detmer, he was Wiccan, he was in jail, and he was refused ritual objects that he needed for worship. So the Court of Appeals ruled that Wicca was entitled to First Amendment protection like any other religion. So yeah, it wasn't until 1986. Mm-hmm. In 1998, a Wiccan student in Texas enlisted the aid of the ACLU after the school board tried to prevent her from wearing Wiccan jewelry and black clothes, and the board eventually reversed its view and allowed her to wear her jewelry.
Amazing.
In 2005, U.S. Army Sergeant Patrick D. Stewart became the first Wiccan serving in the U.S. military to die in combat, but his family was refused a Wiccan pentacle on his gravestone. As a result of a court case initiated by the Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, Wiccan symbols are now accepted by the Veterans Administration.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. It was in 2005, not that long ago.
Aye.
So I'm just going to end. There's an article I read on Refinery 29 called How Four Witches and Wiccans Define Their Faith Themselves by Sarah Coughlin. And it's an interesting article. She interviews a bunch of witches or Wiccans. And the question that I found most interesting was, what do you think people still get wrong about Wiccan practices? So Thorne Mooney says, quote, I think many people don't realize that Wicca started out as an organized, initiatory, coven-based religion, and many of us still practice according to those old traditions. I'm the high priestess of a Gardnerian coven, and we often don't have very much in common with your average Instagram Wiccan. There's a lot more variety in Wicca than even other Wiccans realize. And then Laura Tempest Zakroff says, quote, that Wicca, witchcraft, druidry, voodoo, any of the pagan paths are some weird, crazy, fringe thing or rooted in a Christian concept of good and evil. Honoring and respecting yourself, your body, other people, plants and animals, the environment, there's nothing weird, crazy, or evil about any of that. At the heart of all beneficial spiritual paths is the message to be good to each other, ourselves, and the world around us.
Mm-hmm.
So, I chose to do this topic because when I was younger, I remember being really interested in Wicca. I must have seen it like on TV or something, and I want to learn more about it. So my dad took me to Barnes and Nobles, and we were in like I don't know if it was like the occult section or the religion section, but I remember like looking at all the books about Wicca and then getting like too freaked out or scared that I didn't end up getting any of them. But now looking back, it's like, it's really not scary. I mean, it's a religion just like anything else, and actually a lot less problematic than some other.
Right. My best friend in grade school into early high school was a practicing Wiccan. And so I was introduced to the religion very early on. And I've always been interested in it as like a result. One of the most interesting things that I love about Wiccanism or neo-paganism or witchcraft is that like it truly is so different from person to person. And there's people that practice witchcraft or a version of Wicca that looks different than what you might expect it to look like. You know, they talk about in Drawing Down the Moon by Margaret Adler, they talk about there are specific groups and sects of people in the United States that are practicing Wiccan or witchcraft or pagan things, but they would never call themselves that. And it's these traditions that are passed down from women to women to women to woman, things like different various superstitions that you might have around your household, like laying this out at night or putting this bowl of salt outside the door, or this is how you plant plants in this kind of way, and this is how you line your property, and this is how you organize your house. And all of these things are steeped in like Wiccan or witchcraft or pagan traditions, but they've been passed down for so long that they've lost the word for it in a way. And so there's a lot of interviews in the book where people are raised in these households and they don't realize that it's Wiccan until they go away to some liberal arts school and they start reading about paganism and neo-paganism, and they're like, holy crap, I was raised as a witch and I had no idea. My mom doesn't even know that what she's teaching me is witchcraft. And I think it's cool too that you can be an atheist and also be a witch, because a lot of people believe in witchcraft as just like a connection to Mother Earth, you know, and like Earth is a goddess. It can be like a personification of a goddess, but it's also like just, you know, the world, the place that you live is your god, which I think is interesting too. Anyway, I love this topic. I could talk about it for literally 5 ever. So I'm glad you did it.
Yes. I mean, obviously it's, you know, complicated and deep. I wanted to just stick to like the historical, how it kind of came about. But yes, it's very, I mean, interesting. You could really do a deep dive. I'm sure there's probably like a Wicca podcast.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure there is. If you know of a Wicca podcast, please recommend it to me, because that is like so far up my alley.
And don't be scared in Barnes and Nobles. Not that those exist anymore.
There is this book series of a girl who was a practicing witch, and she practiced Wicca. And maybe you remember it. It's like a young adult book about a young girl who's a witch, and there's candles on the cover. It was like a white candle, a red candle, and another one, a black candle. It was a series of this girl being a witch. Oh, it scared the crap out of me. If I find it, I'll share it too.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I got.
Amazing. Very good.
Okay, so as promised, we have our interview with Haley Gold, the author of Letters to Margaret, which is a graphic novel about crossword bloggers told from 2 different points of view. But let's let Haley tell you more about it.
Okay, we're here today with Haley Gold, the cartoonist behind the brand new graphic novel, Letters to Margaret. Haley, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
First and foremost, we would love to know if you could tell us about your book.
This is a 128-page graphic novel, crossword-based graphic novel, in that there are crosswords integrated into the story and solvable puzzles. In it, however, you don't need to do them in order to read the story and get everything out of it, because it is all the information is placed in context if you just read the comic. It is 2-sided, so it opens from each side. You know, it's if you have the physical copy, you flip it upside down. Obviously, if you have the digital copy, you can just manipulate your file to read how you like. And though both sides take place over the same spans of time, over the same events, and approximately the same location, it is from 2 different points of view from the 2 main characters. So you see this same story from 2 perspectives. And all the main characters in the story, besides just the 2 main characters who are the perspectives, the other characters, well, they're all crossword puzzle bloggers. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's someone who blogs on the daily crossword. That crossword bloggers can be for all sorts of outlets. Some are for the New York Times, some are for the LA Times, you know, any kind of regular puzzle that's out there. And some of them do multiple outlets. And I mean, all of the ones in the comic are not real, but it is a variation of that phenomenon that occurs in the real life internet, which is often more hyperbolic than the ones that I portray in the comic.
So what's the story about? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The two main characters that are the two sides are Margaret A. Cross. We call her Maggie for short because there would be confusion based on a plot point I'll get on to later if we didn't, and Derry Down. Maggie is upset about a lot of the PC-ness being enforced by some of the bloggers, also how small her own blogging audience is, and also by her frustration in her attempts to get her own crossword into the New York Times. She is a sophomore journalism student at Columbia University. She lives in a dorm with her roommate, Amanda Zucker. They receive a letter from Margaret Farrer, who is the first editor of the New York Times crossword puzzle. And Margaret, who is been deceased since the 1980s, seems to be helping her in order to help her refine her puzzle to get it published. Meanwhile, on the other side of the book, and also on her side, she encounters Derry Down, who is also involved in puzzle blogging and has a reverse opinion about where he does not think puzzle sensitivity has gone far enough. He feels that right now, a lot of the mainstream outlets, the way they're operating discourages diversity in both the content of puzzles and the creators and constructors of puzzles, and that a lot of the content of the puzzles can be offensive and alienate people. And the two of them, their worlds collide. That is the basis of the story without trying to give away too much.
Without any spoilers, of course.
Yeah. Because like there's spoilers very superficially, like if you really just get into the very bare bones of the story. So it's a little hard to get around.
So what made you want to tell this story?
First of all, I'm very into crosswords, so that's one thing. And my
Aren't we all?
I don't know who wouldn't be, except for a lot of close family. Writing about something that I'm already passionate about is something that clearly has a lot of appeal. Then also, though, before I even thought of the crossword element, I was just finishing writing an autobiographical piece, and I was thinking about what to do next. And I really just think about whatever is on my mind and what's bothering me. I was very upset about the division I saw in the crossword community. I wasn't going to broach it from a crossword standpoint, but that's where I saw it because that's what I follow. The people who are on both sides of these issues in crosswords and everywhere are not really willing to consider other people's perspectives on things, where like I listen to a lot of people who have divided opinions on these things. And honestly, if you just listen to them, either side, they're both reasonable. I mean, I'm not talking about the people who are like fundamentalist extremes, but I'm not going to get into that. But it's like just your average person who has a measured point of view that like is reasonable. It's like, don't cancel them out. Don't write them off. Listen to them, and you may, change your opinions a little bit. And you may affect their opinions a little bit if you're willing to listen to them and talk to them, and just try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And as a comic book artist, in other ways in my previous work, and this one, by doing it as this two-sided thing, I wanted a way to force people to have to do that to read the book. I guess I wanted to be manipulative. So that's basically how it all came together. I didn't initially think of it as two-sided. I just wanted to explore it from at first I just did one side, Maggie's side, but then as it came together, I'm like, oh, this is how I have to do this.
One of the really cool things and things we found interesting about the graphic novel as we were reading it is obviously the interactive element, these solvable crosswords within the book. And you actually worked with Andy Kravis and Mike Selinker to construct these puzzles that are inside the actual book. I don't believe you're a crossword constructor. Are you a crossword constructor yourself?
I am not at all. No.
We are not either, so no judgment there.
I wish. So with working with Mike and Andy, did you have them insert the puzzles into the story after you had already written it, or did you all work on everything in tandem? How did that work out?
This is how it worked. First, Mike wasn't even involved in the project at all until very, very late in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I came up with the ideas for the book, I initially only had an idea for, but what happens is Maggie creates several drafts of her puzzle as Margaret helps her edit it. So there's 3 drafts of Maggie's puzzle. And then there's one other puzzle that comes in late in the story that I needed. And I knew I needed all those puzzles. And I already knew the constraints and the theme for them and some of the major fill and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, I got to find someone to help me there. And then also for the blogs, you actually see, the websites in the comic commenting on particular puzzles. I wanted to have like half a puzzle sticking down into it or something like that, that will be reflective of what the characters are commenting on.
Mm-hmm.
So I contacted Andy, and together we came up with those couple of puzzles. Then Mike, who was really acting as the publisher and editor, not really as a puzzle constructor, came and looked at this, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like, well, and by the way, at the time, Andy now works for the New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time he worked for the New York Times, and since these were supposed to be New York Times style crosswords, that was a very helpful thing.
Sure.
So then when Mike looks at it, he's like, well, he was interested in publishing this book. He's never published a graphic novel before, but he was interested from the point of view of someone who works at a games company. And he's like, this book needs more crosswords to appeal to our audience. So what I want you to do is take all these half crosswords and make them into whole crosswords. And I'm like, I don't think I can't do that. Can you? And he said he's going to try. So he did. Now, he's not as experienced as Andy with that. So like after we did some test solving on that, we brought Andy back into the picture, and he did a lot of revision on those puzzles to make sure they're New York Times style, to make sure the fill was good, to make sure they were fun. And that is really how that whole process happened. My future work, I'm handling the process differently now that I have more experience. Because when I went around getting Andy, it's like I can't really afford anything, so I was very limited. But now I'm thinking broader, because I know like I feel a little bit more liberation in terms of getting the puzzles involved in the story, and also have more interest on the part of creators now that they see what I'm doing.
That makes sense.
So if people are interested in supporting Letters to Margaret, where can they buy the book? Where can they support the book?
We had a Kickstarter campaign which ended not too long ago. And now what it's transferred to is something called a pledge manager, which I believe my publisher knows more about this than me, but allows you to still get all the perks. For example, there is a mini comic available if you buy the book, and then I think for an extra $5, something like that, which features a Robin Weintraub Friday style puzzle.
Lovely.
And so I think you can like piggyback on top of that. And then once the book is printed and in stock at the website, it's no longer a pre-order situation, and you'll just be able to receive it. And we're hoping to have wider distribution in stores as the year goes on, and other places like that. But the one place I'm sure you can at least sign up for something is at loansharkgames.com, and that's spelled Lone, like a single shark, not a scam artist. Loansharkgames.com/LTM. Those are the initials of the title of the book. LTM. There you should be able to get what you need.
That's great.
All right.
So you heard it here. Head over to Loan Shark Games to check out more about Letters to Margaret. Thank you so much for being on with us today, Haley. We really appreciate you coming on and talking about your new book with us.
Thanks.
If you want more information on Letters to Margaret, please look in the episode details. We have linked to the Loan Shark Games website as well as the Kickstarter. You can find everything you need to know there. And I guess that wraps it up for this episode.
That's it and that's all, folks. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.